Hello, I would like to welcome Jenny, who has recovered from long COVID, to share a bit about her story and experience and how she has recovered. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am 36. I'm a mum of two young boys, who were very little when I first got poorly. They were 1 and 3 when I first got poorly, and are now 3 and 6. I'm an occupational therapist, and was working on a busy mental health ward, at the time I got sick. And I'm now going back into a different role as an occupational therapist in special needs education.
Great. And I met Jenny at the SERPA Pain Conference in September, and we just happened to sit next to each other. And I discovered that Jenny comes from Sheffield, and she had recovered from long COVID. So that's how I got to know Jenny, which has been great.
It really felt like fate that we were sat next. I'm like, oh, you're from Sheffield.
It really was. So it just started, and little did Jenny know that I have a specific interest in long COVID at that time. So it was a great connection. So would you tell me a little bit about your life running up to having COVID?
Yeah. And so I think that's quite significant for me, the couple of years leading up to when I got COVID, because I really feel like that impacted on why I got unwell. So firstly, I had a great life, I have a great life. I have a lovely husband, great family and friends, two beautiful boys, a good job that I enjoyed. So, I had a great life, but I'd had a real build-up of stress the couple of years before I got COVID. So, although having my children was wonderful, I found it quite a difficult experience, and I sort of got anxiety after my first son. We all got a really nasty virus, and it was a really stressful experience, and I had a panic attack, and that gave me a bit of anxiety after that. And but everything was fine. I was progressing in my career. I was pushing myself very hard, even though it was a very busy time, and I had was obviously having children, which maybe should have been a time that I was calming down a bit. But I think I'm a typical type A personality. I was pushing forward, trying to climb the career ladder, and so yeah, everything was going well. And then I had my second son, and the anxiety crept back a bit because I was a bit worried, is it going to be hard like it was after my first son? And then after I had my second son, I had an illness. My sodium levels crashed dangerously low, and they kept on crashing low, and I kept on being taken to hospital in the middle of the night in an ambulance, and they were dangerously low, and they were having to top my sodium levels back up. And there was never really a big explanation. I now understand that's just something that can happen after birth, but there was never a bit of like much of an explanation. And I was very scared. Obviously, I'd just had a baby. I'd had an induction, so I think that had a bit of an impact. I had a lot of chemical, I think that can affect your hormones, a chemical induction. Yeah, and I was finding it really hard, and I became very unwell, and I got admitted to hospital for a week, which I now think was my first episode of a mind body illness. But at the time, they were doing all sorts of tests, and it was scary. I was separated from my baby for nearly a week when he was only a couple of weeks old. Um, so it was a really hard time, but I got better. I got out of hospital. Everything was fine. But 3 days after I got discharged from hospital, my baby took very unwell. He had a really dangerously high temperature for a newborn baby. So I rushed him to Children's A&E, and it turned out he had meningitis.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it was absolutely terrifying. After just having gone through all of that myself, um, so we had to stay in a children's hospital. He was very unwell. It was very scary. He was fine. He recovered. Everything was fine. But I guess like that year, I got back to life, but I was very sort of shaken by it all. Hadn't really had a lot of help with working through it all. I had anxiety on and off. I was fine, like, I was still living life, but I wasn't quite myself, I'd say. And I went back to work, and at the height of the beginning of the COVID pandemic, which was obviously very stressful for everybody, and it was nerve-wracking going back to work, which actually was fine when I got back to work. The hospital was really well set up. That felt quite fine, but I was there was some stressful things going on at work, and I was putting myself on a lot of pressure to go for this more senior job. And I remember saying to my husband, I am so stressed. I'm just so stressed. I'm so stressed. I was just so stressed. And then I got COVID. So we didn't actually know at the time. I had a negative test actually, but I do believe it was COVID. And the doctors that I've seen have said it makes sense that it was COVID, because I was working on a ward where we had patients who tested positive for COVID. It all started with a cough. So do you want me to tell you a bit about what happened when I got COVID now?
So just a little question. What time, when was that? You said the height of COVID.
In July 2020.
Okay.
July 2020.
Yeah, so it was March time that lockdown started, so it was quite soon after that.
Yeah. There was a lot of COVID around, and in the hospital there was a lot of COVID around.
And did you ever have, so you had a viral type illness without a positive COVID test? Did you ever have an antibody test that proved that you had COVID?
I didn't. I did want to, but I was so unwell within that 6-month period that I never managed to get to go for one. And then by the time I felt able to go for one, I heard that I was kind of out of the window anyway. So it didn't seem.
So it's one of those, you will never know 100% was this definitely COVID or not. It might have been, considering the circumstances and what was going on around you at the time.
It seems likely. I was around COVID, and it all started with a cough. So a lot of the doctors I saw just said, this is long COVID, but some said, oh, you haven't had a positive test, so we'll treat it as ME. I actually got diagnosed with ME because that was just the service I went down, but then I went down the long COVID service as well. But I think really whatever it was, it was a virus that through my system. I was already in a fight and flight state, and this was something that attacked my system, and my body obviously perceived it as a massive threat because I was in that.
And that's the absolute key thing. You had a virus, whatever we're going to call that virus, and that had an impact on your nervous system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what happened when I got the cough? It wasn't terrible. It was just a normal sort of virus with a cough. But then when I got sort of like, as I was getting better, then I started, all sorts of very strange things started happening. I was getting very lightheaded and dizzy. I was sort of having a conversation with somebody and I was like, whoa, what's happening? I'm feeling dizzy. It was just, just never, wasn't feeling quite right. But the acute virus was over. I'd had a negative test, so I went back to work, and I sort of thought, you've been anxious, you've been stressed, it's just a bit of anxiety. I was just trying to sort of push it under the carpet a little bit. But then I did probably the most daft thing I've ever done in my life. When I wasn't feeling like this, I probably should have just been hunkering down and resting a bit. But I decided to take, because we'd all been so locked up, you could at this point take your children to a theme park. So I was, it was outside and stuff. So I was really desperate to do something with my oldest son. He'd been so locked in, like we all had. So I thought, I'm not feeling 100%, but I really wanted to have a day with my oldest son going to this theme park. But it was torrential rain that day. Again, it was another sign, don't go. But it was torrential rain, and I did go. And so we spent a whole day outside getting soaking wet. And then we went on these spinning rides. And I'd already had this dizziness. And then, oh my gosh, that day was the end of everything for me. When I got home, I've even got a picture of me. I don't know why my husband took me. I was in a blanket like this. And then I remember standing up to try and cook tea, and the whole world was just spinning, and I was just, well, something's really wrong. And I went to bed, and I remember calling in sick the next day to work with saying, you know, I'm not well, I've got a migraine, I'm dizzy. I'll be back tomorrow, I'm sure. But then I never did ever end up going back to work. That was sort of the beginning of very, very difficult couple of years for me.
Mhm. And so over those couple of years, what was your functionality like?
So it varied. So straight after that, I was very unwell with this horrendous dizziness. But then I sort of came back up again a bit, and I thought, oh, I'm coming out of whatever this is. But then I crashed down. So just a couple of months after that, it was. I feel like that might have been when I still had the COVID in my system, and I I was so unwell that I didn't eat anything. This is no exaggeration. I didn't eat anything for a week. I was so nauseous. I couldn't face food. I had this horrendous dizziness, these migraines. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. I thought this is must be what it feels like to die. It was so horrendous. So I was going to hospital, and I had a few trips to A&E, but they would always say there's, you're fine. But then I saw this great doctor in A&E actually. He said, look, this is long COVID. You're probably going to be in here for a bit of a haul, but you're safe, there's nothing life threatening. You've just got to really try and pull yourself out of it. And that was really useful at that moment. I thought, right, I've got to get myself moving and stuff a little bit. So I got myself moving a bit, but then I think I got myself then, like everybody does, desperate and right, this is long COVID and me sort of thing. So I was searching Google, and I went down quite a lot of the wrong paths for me. Um, and then my functioning just went down and down because I got into this sort of strict pacing of you need to do this diet, this thing, a lot more pressure on myself. And then, oh, I'm not meant to walk further than this. And then it came to the point when I, like with long COVID, it goes a bit up and down. But even at my best, I couldn't even get to the bottom of my street. How long did I go on for? About a year. And then at my worst, I wouldn't leave. I wouldn't leave the bed other than to go to the toilet. And even that, sometimes I had to get my husband to help me to do that. Having a shower and washing didn't happen as regular as it should have been because it was just such an effort. So yeah, the fatigue was massive, and I had a real eye strain. So I didn't watch any TV or look at screens for a lot of the time. I started listening to things, which was helpful. Again, I'd find that fatiguing. So I was really restricted. I wasn't able to be a mom to my children at all. They really missed out on me for a couple of years. I wasn't able, my oldest son's, the school's 10 minutes up the road, and that just seemed like it was Mount Everest. It was that impossible just to get him up to school. So your friends used to have to walk him to school. My husband just had to do everything really. Family, luckily we had grandparents nearby. So I was very debilitated by it.
Mhm. But were you ever given any other medical diagnostic labels? So you mentioned ME, and did you have any investigations that were abnormal?
So at one point, I just, you're just desperate searching for things. At one point, I went down the line of thinking, is this something else that we've not missed? Have I got something here that's, really, killing me or something? I need to find out. So I think I started looking into Addison's disease, and I had my cortisol levels checked, and they were really low. Is it low? I think when they've had a lot of stress, I think it was low. So then I saw an endocrinologist, and I've got hypothyroidism anyway, and that was going all haywire during this time. So I saw him, but then I had all the tests for Addison's disease. It wasn't Addison's disease. I had all the blood tests. They thought I had. A lot of doctors said, "Oh, it seems like you've got POTS," because my heart raced every time I stood up. But they never actually. There was talk of sending me for the tilt table, but I never did. But it was just sort of presumed I had PoTS. But yeah, and I had an MRI of my brain. That was actually really reassuring because of this, I couldn't read anything, I couldn't focus on anything, I couldn't watch TV. I think actually having an MRI in my brain and seeing that was fine was very reassuring. That was one thing that really was a really reassuring test for me. I think, yeah, I might have struggled a bit more if I hadn't have had that, because I thought, right. And it did get to a point when I thought, I had all these tests, I'm okay. I am okay. This is, long COVID or ME. My official diagnosis was ME caused by COVID. So yeah, so I got more confident that there wasn't actually anything, there wasn't any other condition.
So just going back to the pacing, I know we've had a bit of a conversation about pacing. It's very much a technique that's promoted and encouraged in the long COVID ME community. What are your thoughts on that in terms of, I know you say you feel that it wasn't necessarily beneficial to you. Could you just expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so we had a quick chat about it, didn't we? So I want to make it clear, like anything I'm saying, because I know when I was unwell, I'd watch a recovery video and think, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this. This is a prescription. I need to do this, this, and this, and get better. But it's not like that. Everybody finds their own path. And I have a friend who recovered with pacing, and pacing was incredibly helpful for her. But for me, it just did more damage. So for me personally, it was very damaging. And the reason it was damaging for me was because it didn't bring any safety to me. So I think pacing can be really helpful for people when it brings some safety. That people aren't pushing themselves, that they're pushing the symptoms too far, having big flare-ups. They're keeping themselves within a safety zone. It feels safe that they're building up gradually, and they're teaching their brain that this is safe, this is okay, this activity is okay. But for me, it did the opposite. It taught my brain that activity was dangerous, because I could never get pacing right. I'm not particularly marvelous at being the most organized person and sticking to a structure like that. I mean, I also had two very small children, so I was never going to be able to stick to something precisely, because so I was always, one of them, my youngest needs his nappy change and the other one's poorly, I've been up in the night or something like that. There was always something that made me feel like I was failing at pacing. So, oh, I've done this extra, I'm going to be so much worse, I'm going to have a flare up. So I was telling my brain, this is dangerous, this is very dangerous. And then I would have a flare up because my brain was perceiving the danger. So I'm pacing. So to start with, I was more acutely unwell, like the period when I said I couldn't even eat. But I was much more like this sort of the first year. I was able to build myself up and get out. But the pacing actually made me go like this, to the point. But when things really changed, I thought I can't live like this, because I was literally just lying there looking out the window, either meditating. Even noise felt dangerous to me. So listening to anything was dangerous. This quick pacing, it got me to the point where I was just doing less and less. I was more afraid of overdoing it so much. So yeah, so for me, pacing was not helpful. And I think that's just useful to say, because I know that for a lot of people it is really helpful, and that's great. Like I said, my friend, it was so helpful for. But I think the really important thing for me is, not to put more pressure on yourself. My system was in a state of fight or flight. It felt like it was being attacked. I was terrified. My whole system was terrified. It didn't need any more pressure. I needed things, I needed care, love, compassion to myself, not something that I needed to be failing at. And that was the same with diets. I did these crazy diets that I wasn't very good at sticking to. So then I would have I don't know, a pizza and think, oh no, I'm not going to get better. I've had a pizza. It was just, and then I would read, and then recovery interviews were amazing for me. They gave me so much hope, and they did eventually lead to me getting better. But some I would listen, right, I need to be taking this supplement, otherwise I'm not going to get better. That just wasn't helpful for me, and I wasn't taking any supplements when I did get better. I wasn't on any strict diet. I wasn't on any strict pacing regime when I got better.
Thank you. That explains it really well. So pacing has a place, but the key thing is if it's going to cause your body more stress and you're putting more pressure on yourself, then it could be unhelpful. And I've come across people who have such fixed boundaries with what they can and can't do. As soon as they step out of that boundary, that generates more stress, which has a negative impact, and can hold somebody in their state of fatigue.
I see, like, and I hear, you know, I've made friends from being sick, and I see things on the online forums, people saying, oh no, I did this, I felt great when I was doing it, and I just got carried away, and now I'm going to be feeling really sick, I know I'm going to give myself a crash. And then they do have a crash because that's what they're telling their brain, which I did to myself. I just wasn't linking it up, and it's, and you know, and it's difficult to link up because it's not what we're being told in, you know, mainstream routes. So, you know, if you're telling your brain you're in danger and you're going to have a crash because you've done something, then that happens.
But my other little bug is that there's a lot of focus on heart rate monitoring. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I never did the heart rate monitoring, but I'm sure it will do the same as the steps monitoring. I did the steps monitoring, and so I could only do 300 steps, I think, at one point in a whole day, and I should only be increasing by 100 steps a week or something. So I'd be, you know, oh, I need the toilet, but I'm going to be going over these steps. And that just, it created an obsession, something else to fail at, something else to reduce my mobility because steps were dangerous. So I imagine the heart rate thing would have done exactly the same for me. I'm sure if I hadn't have found the path that got me better, I would have probably ended up doing the heart rate because I was trying everything. But I think the steps thing was very similar, I think. And actually, I did realise when I did the steps, I was getting closer to sort of working out what was going on. So I did realise quite quickly, no, this isn't a good thing to be doing for me.
So the heart rate monitoring is similar, as in you work out your anabolic threshold and you monitor your heart rate and you make sure that your heart rate doesn't go above this anabolic threshold. So I think I worked out for myself and it would be about 95. But it's very difficult to do life keeping your heart rate that low. And actually, our heart is designed to go faster, and it's safe and it's okay to go faster. So putting this restriction, I've spoken to many people, it generates more fear and more anxiety, feeding into a nervous system that's already in a fight-flight state. So it can have more of a negative impact than a positive impact.
And I think that's the thing where we're going a bit wrong, is I think some of these things have been really useful for some people, because that some people felt maybe had the experience of using heart rate monitoring, it making them feel incredibly safe. And so then their symptoms lifted and they start to get better. Again, with pacing, but I think the problem with it being prescribed without the knowledge around your nervous system is it's not for everybody. Because if it doesn't make you feel safe, then it's not going to be doing any good at all.
So you were, it sounds like you were really unwell, really debilitated for a couple of years. How did you get out of it? What did you do? How did you recover?
So I think for the first year or so, I really went down the physical route of diet, any supplement I could take, pacing, and it just didn't work at all. It was getting me worse. And then the second year, I think I was sort of starting to work out what might be impacting, but it took a while still. So I think, you know, and I watched loads of recovery videos. They're really helpful for me. And then there started to be a bit more talk about brain retraining, trauma, you know, different types of trauma therapy and stuff. And so I started to think, you know, there's got to be some connection with how I was having a tough couple of years before I got unwell, and that started to sort of click a bit. So I got a psychotherapist who I saw every week for quite a while, who was absolutely incredible. So she was the first really positive shift for me, a real positive move in the right direction. But it took some time because, you know, I was having a psychotherapy, and talking about upsetting things, and it was flaring up symptoms. So I even had at one point, should I stop this? I think it's useful, but I'm not feeling better. So it took me a while then continuing. I think the thing that I didn't do, and I had moments when I nearly gave up. I had moments when I felt suicidal because there just didn't seem a way out. And and I hate saying that now because it would be my absolute worst fear to leave my children without a mother. But I was so low and desperate, and I felt like I couldn't be their mother anyway. But generally, I had a sort of drive to keep on trying, and I did just keep on researching and just to keep not giving up. And so I kept on researching, and I kept on listening to these recovery videos, because that's something I could do. I could listen to them, I could break them up into what I can manage. And so there started to be more talk of brain retraining and stuff. Sorry, carry on.
Can I ask, well, where you were finding these recovery videos from? Do you have some of your favourite resources that you could share?
So Raylan Eagle is this incredible woman in America, and she shares all sorts of recovery videos for people recovering in all sorts of ways. She's just incredible, and without her, I don't think I would have got better, because I wouldn't have found the people that did help me. The only slight issue I had with that was that people again recover in different ways, and at times it was it did send I did this very strict pacing because of a video I watched on that. At times it sent me a bit down the wrong avenues. At times when I wasn't quite clear, I was, somebody was doing a video saying they used all these supplements to get better, and I think, oh, I need to. And then another one didn't use those supplements; they used these supplements. So it was overwhelming as well. But generally, it was a really good thing for me. It got me to find the information. I don't know. I don't think I would have found the information that I needed to get better without. I don't know how I would have come across it. So yes, that was really helpful. And so I was starting to piece together, right, okay, stress, the physical symptoms. And then my psychotherapist said something. It was just like a massive light bulb moment. I remember saying to her, I was really, after everything that happened after I had my second child, I was terrified of becoming too unwell to be able to look after my children. And that was a big fear of mine. And she just said, isn't the brain a powerful thing? It was a really simple thing like that. And it was just like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe my brain's got something to do with this. I was terrified of being too unwell to look after my children, and then that's happened. So those things started to click, and so I found a brain retraining program, which again is a great one, and I know it's helped a lot of people get better. But it was a bit of a disappointment moment for me, because I thought, right, I'm on the right lines. This with the psychotherapy, but this brain retraining program, again, was pressure. There was homework I had to complete, and they would be saying, you need to give yourself the best chance to recover. You must do this homework. So then I think I've not done my homework. I'm not giving myself the best chance to recover. And the brain retraining wasn't very compassionate. It was saying, stop. When you had a thought, an illness thought, it was saying stop and get rid of that thought. So then I was walking around going stop, and putting myself in a bit more.
Did it have a name? Is it a specific?
Yeah, and I don't want to say anything negative about this, because I know a lot of people recovered from this, and it is a brilliant program, and it did give me quite a lot of good information. But for me, it just wasn't quite right. It's Anne's Rewire.
Anne's Rewire.
Or is it, or how did they say, or is it ANS Rewire they say, or
okay.
ANS Rewire? But it's brilliant, and the bloke who does it is incredible, and it's helped a lot of people get better. But for me, it just wasn't. It was a bit too much pressured and not compassionate enough, really. So that was a bit of a sort of like a fork in the road, because I sort of thought I was on the right track, but then it wasn't quite right. So I was a bit confused at that time. But then fortunately on Raylan's channel, I watched another video of somebody called Rebecca Tolan be interviewed. And I was just like, yes, that's it. That's it. And she said like something at the big end of her interview. She said that she realised that she wasn't sick. And she's like, somebody said to her, you are not sick. And I know that's really a very offensive term to a lot of people that are ill with this, because of course you're sick. I was very, very sick. But what it means is not some physical ailment. This is not being caused by, a cancer or a tumor. This is my brain that's causing this. This is reversible. This is not, my brain's got this virus and it's perceived this massive threat and it's never got out of this threat. But the virus isn't there anymore. I was not sick. And she basically, she's a coach and she coached me in America, but she is just the SERPA approach. It's all based on the original founder, like John Sarno, just like SERPA. So unfortunately, I didn't find SERPA at that time, which would have been great. But Rebecca is very much the SERPA approach, all based on, originally John Sarno's work, Dr. John Sarno's work, who's just was a wonderful, wonderful man. And she's very generous. She shares lots of things on her website. So I started watching YouTube videos with Dr. Schubner, who's again a really great in the mind-body field, who I heard talk when I went to the SERPA conference with you. So it was all very linked to the SERPA stuff. And for me, it was everything else hadn't been quite right, but this made sense. It made sense. And I thought, oh, wow, I understand it now. This is my mind, this is my brain generating this illness. And I need to retrain those neural pathways. So I feel like when I got this information, I literally got better like that, which I think is unusual. But for me, I'd had the information in my brain already, because when I'd got ill after having Bodhi, as soon as I was discharged from hospital, I was better. And so, which was odd because I'd been really ill. And I'd felt safe when I got discharged from hospital. They told me I was all right. So for me, I had this information in my brain anyway. I know this is right because this has happened to me before. So when I say I was better, like instantly like that, I wasn't out, working or doing a school run or anything, but I knew I was better.
Mm-hmm.
So it still took me time to build up to normal life, but I wasn't afraid of normal life. Like I was saying to you earlier, I remember having some friends round and I had terrible brain fog and I was struggling to concentrate on what they were saying, but I was happy because I knew it wasn't dangerous. And like Dr. John Sarno says, get back to living your life. Live your life. It's not dangerous to live your life. These symptoms aren't dangerous to me. And I know a lot of people can't, again, and that's what I'm saying, like one size doesn't fit all. A lot of people have to do it a lot more gradually, and to, instigate those symptoms might put their system into fight or flight even more and scare them. But for me, I was that certain of what was going on. The symptoms weren't dangerous to me anymore.
So I want to ask you, what did you do to get better? So there's two things that I picked up on. So number one is belief. You were willing to accept that the brain is generating these symptoms. There's nothing physically wrong with your body. So that's a really big part of this. And number two is these symptoms, these sensations, they're not dangerous. It's okay. You can be with them, sit with them, take them with you in your life, but they're not dangerous. So they're two key things. But what else did you do?
So I think the belief as well became from education. So education is massive. I needed not just to hear this from somebody on the internet. It was good that there were doctors that I was able to, listen to their books, hear them being interviewed. I could understand the science behind it. That was important to me. I know some people find it that they can just believe in this person they've met online that's doing a course, but I needed to understand the science behind it. So it was a lot of education, and the psychotherapy was massive as well, because I think all along it, if I hadn't have done that psychotherapy the year before, I think that the combination of both was very helpful for me. I needed to release a lot of emotions and trauma that I didn't realise I was doing it, but I just blocked. My emotions are dangerous, difficult memories are dangerous. I just blocked them off. And so although the psychotherapy was really difficult at times, And at times I thought, oh, is this the wrong thing? Is it getting me better? I think I needed to release all of that and to teach my my body that you can think of difficult things. You can have difficult emotions. They're not dangerous. They are part of us. They need to be processed. That was huge. And then another really huge thing for me was somatic tracking. So Rebecca Tolan, actually, in this interview, I listened to like explain somatic tracking in a few minutes. So I just went over these few minutes and listened over and over again. And I just sat down and I just did it with myself. And it was incredible because any symptom I'd felt, I'd been, oh my gosh, this is dangerous. I need to not feel this, push myself away from it. And actually doing totally the opposite and just laying down and focusing on my headache and, all the things that didn't feel right. I felt like this huge weight. It was incredible. This first time I did it, and I was just literally doing it. I didn't have a guided one or anything. I just was laid down on my sofa doing it. And the weight that had been lifted off me, I think just showing myself, wow, this isn't dangerous. It was incredible. So somatic tracking played a huge part. And that's just feeling my bodily sensations, feeling them and teaching my brain that they weren't dangerous. So yeah, that was massive.
Yeah,
So
all these things are key and are themes that have come out with other people I've spoken to.
And then the other thing, again, was just getting on and living my life without restrictions, without thinking, oh no, you can only walk to there was a post box I couldn't walk to. It's like literally 3 minutes away from my house. For years, I couldn't walk to this post box. And I just got up and walked. I walked past it. I mean, I didn't walk far. I walked for 10 minutes, but I wasn't, I was walking just without, because that was where I was going to walk without these restrictions. I just got back to my life. And it wasn't like, I went out running, or I didn't get back I naturally did it in a more graded way. I just got back to, I want to do this today, I'll do this. And it was naturally a bit more graded. We went on a holiday, which I never thought I'd be able to go on. We only had it booked because it'd been delayed because of COVID. And it came to a point where we had to go. And, I just thought, well, it just seemed possible. But it was around this time when I was making all these breakthroughs. So we thought, right, we'll go. And on the way there, I had a wheelchair through the, assistance through the airport. And then on the way back, I just walked all the way through the airport and I was fine. Because again, it was just like I was on holiday and I can do a bit of swimming. I am able to play with my children. I can go for a meal. And so it was quite natural. It wasn't like I just got up and was instantly doing everything, but I was at my own pace without any restrictions of this is what you can do. I was just getting myself out there and living life again and finding that joy from things. Joy was really massive because I think you experience a moment of joy and you're not feeling any of the symptoms. You feel fine because you're distracted in this joy. Your nervous system's getting a break. But then that gives you a bit of evidence. Oh, right, okay, I was fine doing that because I was really enjoying it. It's not coincidental when you say, oh, it was amazing. I had this great day that I was really looking forward to. I had no symptoms. It was such a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. It's because that was a great day. You were like, I was happy. My nervous system wasn't in flight or flight. It wasn't feeling any external threat. So all about evidence. Definitely, like I listened to, I think John Sarno has these 12 daily reminders, and there's an audio you can listen to on YouTube. And his symptoms are not dangerous is one of them. Get out and live your lives. Just getting out and living your life. It wasn't complicated for me, recovery. I think, and I know for some people it's really difficult. What was really difficult for me was being unwell. It was horrendous. What wasn't difficult was getting better. I wasn't putting pressure on myself. I wasn't thinking I've got to do this day, this day. I was just learning that I was okay and I could live my life and I could enjoy my life. So it wasn't anything really complicated with me, really. But the key ones would definitely be somatic tracking, the psychotherapy, and having a really good psychotherapist who really got me, and then finding this mind body and finding people like Rebecca Tolan, I said, who's a coach, and I had some sessions with her. I was actually talking to a real person that got better, so it was real to me because you sort of start telling people, oh yeah, it's really linked to my mind and yeah, my brain is keeping these symptoms going on, and people start going, really, Jenny? So it was amazing for me being able to speak to, people that had got better and understood it. And then things like I went to the serve conference and met you, and I think I just sat next to you crying the whole time. I
Yeah,
thought
you
like
did.
people thought I was crazy, but it was just amazing. There was this whole conference and they were all talking, they all got it. And I was talking to people that got it, and this was amazing. I was getting my life back, and it was just there were other people that understood this approach, and there was evidence. It was just, yeah, that was an incredible moment for me.
Mm. So if you look back, could you summarize what you felt? I mean, you've sort of mentioned this already, but just summarize what you felt contributed to you having long COVID.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd had a stressful couple of years, having children, like I said, was wonderful for me, but um it was a difficult experience. I definitely probably could have just done with some more help. Maybe that would have nipped it in the bud. It certainly gave me anxiety. I found it hard. Um, and perhaps, after I'd had my second son, although again, like a physical thing triggered it, this low sodium levels, maybe a bit of education afterwards about the fact that I'd gone into such a, like, I was terrified. I'd gone into such a, like, my nervous system had been so activated. If I'd had some you know some knowledge of that could have nipped it in the bud. But definitely that just build up of stress and anxiety, again, type A personality that you hear a lot. I couldn't just be at work enjoying a job. I had a lovely band 6 job that I really enjoyed, but I was pushing to get to management, and which was, it wasn't really what I needed, but I had that type of personality that I had to be achieving. And when I look back, it was crazy really. I just had 2 children. I probably had some postnatal anxiety, depression. Why was I thinking this was the perfect time in my life to climb the career ladder? But I have, like, I definitely have a bit of a type A personality. So things from my past as well, I found I had quite a hard time when I was a teenager, because I come from a very loving, supportive family, but I'm dyspraxic. And so I find some things harder. Not everything, were things at school that I was really good at, but I definitely felt a bit different to my family. Things didn't come as easy to me. And so when I was younger, that took the page of me just being really rebellious. But as I got older, I think it turned more into the pressure I put on myself to be up there where I felt the rest of my family was. So I put a huge amount of pressure. So I think learning those things about me, I've decided now that I will be living a life that's authentic and true to myself. It sounds a bit treasy, but it's amazing. Just things like I went out and got a tattoo, I got my nose pierced, because that's stuff I wanted to do, but I'd think, oh, what would people think? Or, the people pleasing. I've done that. I'm getting a job in an area that I'm really passionate about. I have no intention to go anywhere near management, or not that I was good at it. I think it wasn't that, but it just wasn't right for me. It was too much pressure, and I'm trying to live a life that's guided by myself rather than what I feel like I should be doing or should be achieving, which is really revolutionary, because honestly, it's really simple and it doesn't actually affect anybody. But the amount of pressure I think a lot of us put on ourselves to do this or do that. So, and then, this, I'm not, like, again, I was saying to you before we started recording, I'm not a perfect person. I didn't get better by being a perfect person. I slip up. Sometimes I notice that I'm being really hard on myself, or my self-esteem's been a bit low again. I'm not perfect, but I'm aware of these traits within myself now. And I can think, oh, you're being a bit hard on yourself there, Jenny. Show yourself a bit of compassion. So self-compassion was a massive one. Actually being kind to myself and listening to the things I used to say to myself. I'm a good, nice person. I don't need to be mean to myself. So yeah, that was, I think, just changing the way I live, and I hope that goes on and continues. But like I said, I'm not a perfect person. I eat takeaways. I drink wine. I try my best to be healthy, obviously, and that's the right thing to do, but I don't get it right all the time. and I didn't get better by getting it right all the time. But yeah, I got better by giving myself a bit of kindness and compassion.
Amazing. That's such wisdom that you're going to take forward into the rest of your life. If you had some key tips for people who might listen, what would they be in terms of recovery?
Oh, it's so hard because it's so, and I know, when I used to listen to videos like this, it seems so far away when you're not in it. But I guess just to have hope, I came to that point when I really felt hopeless, and I know how awful it is. And I went down the wrong paths. Things weren't working, and they seemed to be working for other people, and it felt hopeless. But it's not hopeless. You'll find your path. And my recovery isn't a prescription. I think it's really important to learn the mind-body connection, everything that Cirque is teaching. But people find a different route through that. Like, some people might find that pacing helps them feel really safe. So you'll find your route, but just know this is not a condition. This is not your life. And then I've seen certain people post, I'm in my 60s, I've had this for so many years, I can't get, you can absolutely get better. As soon as you work out what it is that's causing this, that's it. You can get better. And it's so hard to connect the dots. There's so much confusing information. And particularly, I was told by one doctor, I said to him, I was speaking to him because I was feeling really low in mood. And he said to me, why are you feeling low in mood? And I said, because of a lack of progress in my condition. And he said, well, that's something that you're going to have to try and get used to, because you're going to have this condition for the rest of your life. And when people are being told things like that by doctors, it's so confusing and overwhelming. And you hear things like recovery videos like this, and it's so conflicting. But just try and take this from me. I was really sick. I thought there was no hope. There is hope, absolute hope. And try not, when I was quite proud, it's difficult for me to come out and say, I was struggling with my mental health after I had children. And I feel quite proud of that. Even though I've worked in mental health, it's a difficult thing to say. But there's no reason, your mental health is just as valuable as your physical health. People struggle, things get hard in life, So just try not to be too closed off to what the link is with your brain and your mental health, because it doesn't mean that this isn't real. It's incredibly real. Your brain is making these symptoms. These symptoms are real, but it's not something that you're going to be able to cure, with an operation, or this is something that you're going to have to be able to cure in your own head, really.
Amazing.
And life's good, it's not perfect. Again, I think I see all these things and people think they need to live a perfect life. I have the odd bad day, I find things stressful, but that's okay. That's life. And I'm back to living my life unrestricted. Whether I'm fully better, I don't know. I'm starting work soon, we'll see. But I'm certainly feel it, and I don't feel like I get ill again, because I know what caused it. I'm sure I'll get mind-body symptoms and conditions like everybody does. Everybody gets a headache, or I don't know, like a bad stomach or something, because everybody does have mind-body symptoms. But I know that they won't halt my life again, because I know if they are, then I need to be looking at what's going on in my life.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
On and on about this, Lorna.
Yeah, I know we could talk here all day, but I think we'll finish now. Thank you for everything that you said. Such wisdom. Yeah, so much in that. I will put some of the links on YouTube as well, so you can have a look. So thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Lorna.